some more people to roll in. I guess it's morning for some, afternoon, evening for others. So greetings wherever you're coming in from. Give it a couple of seconds. We have a great, I'm going to call it a show, even though it's a workshop. Sherjan and I have been chatting and we've been excited to have you guys here. Let's see if we can get where some people are from in here.
Yeah, that'd be interesting to know.
Yeah. You got people from all over. Well, you could be doing anything else, anywhere else, but you are here with us. So we appreciate you for tuning in.
Anyone from Asia, Kavana?
I'm waiting for the responses to come in. So we have some from everywhere. Wow.
Oh, there you go. It's good.
Nice, well-rounded audience in here. For our first timers, welcome. For our regulars, second one. So welcome back. Happy to see you. So I'll jump right in. We have Sherjan here. He's going to talk to us about how to get your dream job. Firms like Goldman & Sachs, McKinsey, Google. He has a workshop and he's going to be able to just share how he broke into the market. He's been an analyst, associate, VP, and then he's joined Google's high exclusive investment arm called Capital G with a 3.0 GPA and non-target background. So he's doing his thing out there. So Sherjan, I'm gonna hand it off to you to lead the crowd. I hope you guys have your pen, paper, notepads, notes, and enjoy.
Awesome, thanks Kavana, I appreciate it. Hey guys, my name is Sherjan. I'm really excited to host this event today, this workshop, this webinar, whatever you wanna call it. I'm actually coming live to you from Toronto. I'm actually in my parents' home and taken over her room and I'm using this for the webinar today. But anyways, I just want to kind of give you a quick intro about who I am and what you're going to learn today. So we're going to jump into a deck that I've created just for this webinar, and hopefully it's going to help us, kind of stay on track. All right, so let me just share that with everybody. All right, Kavana, can we make sure you can see this as well? So I know everybody can see this. All right, awesome. So guys, my name is Sherjan, and I used to be a vice president at Morgan Stanley in investment banking and also worked at Google and Capital G, like Kavana said. But at the same time, I come from a very non-target background, and I love doing that. This is my passion, and it's become my main business, what I do on a full-time basis, helping motivate young people, young professionals who are entering the market or trying to transition in their own way right now. And this is kind of like my core bread and butter. But before we begin this workshop, I just want to be straight up and honest with you guys, so everybody knows why they're here, so they're not here for something else. So the first thing is, who is this workshop for? So this workshop is for anybody who is either applying for their first job ever, right, or a seasoned professional trying to transition and get into a dream job that they've always been passionate about. In both cases, we all know that you got to have a high GPA and you got to come from good schools and take the right degrees. We get that part. But the truth about applying for any of these jobs is that you actually have to have the personality and the qualitative skills and skills that are required in the interview process and even before the interview process. And that's what I help teach, right? So I don't help you with doing the job. That's not my forte. My forte is specifically how to get the job. So if you're here to learn how to be an investment banker or be a great Google employee or crush those models and presentations, this is the wrong workshop. I would recommend someone else for that. Here, it's all about how to get the job. All right, so that's what we're going to be focused on. The second thing I want to mention is, like, this workshop is for people with a certain specific mindset, and that mindset is being long-term greedy, right? And so that means is like, you're not going to get anything quickly. It's very, very hard to get into these industries. We all know it. It's super, super competitive, and I'll touch upon that in a bit. But I want you to have an open mind when you take my course or this workshop or any of the courses or any of my talks, and have an open mind with that, and have the the target to be a 5 to 10 year target. And nothing's going to come easy. Nothing's going to come in a month or in a few months, especially given the fact that we're going through a recession and a pandemic globally. So that's number one. The second thing I want to mention is, who is it not for? So if you're, like I said, trying to get a job in Goldman Sachs tomorrow or a week from now or at Google, this is not the course for you. So just wanting to set the expectations right. This is a long-term journey. So just stay with me. I'm going to teach you guys a lot of cool things. They're going to get you an inch closer to that dream job. All right, so let's go back to a little bit of a highlight about myself. And I want to paint a picture before we start the workshop. So the first thing I want to mention is, so there are two photos here. One is me being a vice president at Morgan Stanley. The other one is I was at Google in their exclusive arm called Capital G, which is their late stage investment arm. So if I pause there and I don't tell you anything else about me, you'll be like, okay, those are great brands. You must have gone to a great school. You've been very lucky, you know, have a high GPA and studied business and just know the right people. But the truth is, you know, that's just one part of the story. That's just the cover of the book. All right. Let's dig a little bit deeper into that book, right? So then deeper into that book, here are some other facts about my life. And I'm very open about it and you guys can ask me anything. But just to give you guys a little bit of a highlights about my, you know, actual resume or background is I have a 3.0 GPA. And that GPA is not a good GPA for those of you who are wondering. So if you have a GPA that low, I would recommend doing some things to improve it, like taking a different program or going into a different degree. But having said that, that's my GPA. Then I went to a non-target school, right? I didn't study at Harvard or Stanford or Wharton or Berkeley or some of the top schools where some of these employers generally hire from. So I went to a non-target school, and that school is in Toronto called University of Toronto. And I hope we see that there's a lot of people joining in from Toronto, and I'm from there. So that's number two. The second thing is there's a lot of people who have another, you know, bottleneck in their life, and they're like, oh, I didn't study business, or I didn't study technology, or I didn't go to this program or this degree when I was, you know, an undergrad. How am I going to break into these industries? Well, I didn't study business either. My undergrad was aerospace engineering, right? And not a good aerospace engineer to begin with, right? So you don't want me designing planes at all. Or like my master's was also a second degree in engineering, was a master's in financial engineering. So I've never actually studied accounting or economics or, you know, things that you actually need for doing a job as an investment banker or as an investor at Google. But guess what? Even with that, I was able to break in. Then the last piece is, and this is another, you know, thing that affects a lot of us is, you know, a lot of us could be immigrants or could be from a different part of the world and looking for opportunities in the US or Canada or in Europe. And being an international candidate, international student, or a, you know, an immigrant, for example, like myself, it's hard, right? You have less opportunities available to you. So these are some of the things that I've faced in my life that have impacted me and made my journey to my dream jobs a lot harder. But just because it's hard doesn't mean it's impossible. So that's where, you know, my courses and the motivation that I'll show you in this workshop is helpful. And hopefully it's going to give you a little bit of that edge to get you to be a little bit better and unleash a better version of you. So my ultimate thing is, if I could do it with all those, you know, bottlenecks and headwinds, if I could break in, I'm sure there's at least 1 million other kids or young professionals who I think I can help as well. So I've been teaching these workshops and webinars and courses for the last 10 plus years, and I've taught over 20,000 students. And this is just one of the photos from one of my largest events, which is in Toronto. And my whole goal is, if I can do it, I can motivate thousands and thousands of other people. And you guys are some of them today, and I'm really excited to have you here. All right, so let's talk about what's going to be the agenda for the talk today. So there's a lot of stuff we're going to discuss. The first thing I want to mention is make sure you have a piece of paper or a pen handy. I'm going to be giving you very specific notes and tactics and techniques that are from my journey that I think you should write down. And this is exclusive stuff that I've come up with over the years. And it's some of the best stuff that I've come up with. So I want to make sure this 1 hour that you're here with me, it's as useful to you as possible. So we'll start with motivation and mindset. That's the first segment. That basically means I'm going to walk you through my story, the things that I did right and the things that I did wrong. So you'll not only learn a few lessons from it, but I think it'll motivate you. It'll get you excited. And that's the first fundamental thing about getting into these industries. If you're not excited, if you're not, personable, if you don't show that passion, if you don't have that energy, which is like, hey, I need this energy, this strength to go through this competition, to go through these tough recruiting processes, you're not going to make it. So I want to make sure you get that motivation from my story and apply that motivation, that energy to your own. So that's the first thing, that's motivation. Along with that is going to be a mindset, right? There's a certain style of mindset I want you to have when you're recruiting for these jobs, right? How should you behave in an interview? How should you take a loss? How should you react when you hear a rejection? That mindset is going to help you drive through the tough times. So that's going to be part two. Then the next phase of this workshop is going to be specific tactics and techniques. I'm going to dig deep into a resume. So I'm going to show you guys a little bit about what the format should look like. I'm going to talk about some of the mistakes people make that self-eliminates themselves. And I'm going to talk about something which is a tactic of mine, which is called just numbers and how to use them properly in a resume. So we're going to touch upon that. Then we're going to go into networking. So that's the second piece of recruiting process, which is like, yes, you've built a great resume. How do you get in front of the right people and in front of the right eyeballs? So I'm going to show you guys a little bit of timeline and calendar techniques there. Finally, it's going to be interview, which is, when you're in an interview process, how should you answer questions? And I'm going to pick one really cool technique and go into detail about that and show you an example as well. So that's going to be the high level of the course. After that, I'm going to mention, or the workshop. Then I'm going to show you guys my course that I've actually accumulated all of my life's best work and knowledge into, and give you guys a little bit of a primer on that. And then we'll end this workshop with a Q&A. All right, so let's start with this. So this is, I know there's two numbers, but basically, for those of you who don't know this, this is on the left side is the number of applicants, and on the right side is the number of applicants that were accepted. So this is, if those of you can guess, this is Harvard Business School, right? So we all know HBS is hard to get into, right? It's probably the best business school in the world, closer to GSB as well. But this is kind of what the numbers look like, what the numbers look like for 2020 and for their acceptance rate. So even something that's so hard to get into, it doesn't feel that hard. It's like 1 out of 10 people will get accepted. But then let me show you another number. Here is 250,000 applicants, right? But less than 3% were accepted for finally and were given an offer. And this number comes from Goldman Sachs. Now, Goldman Sachs is just one bank, great bank, even though I think Morgan Stanley is a better bank because I'm from Morgan Stanley. But having said that, Goldman Sachs will always be the best brand. We get it. They get about 250,000 applicants. And of that, they only accept 3% a year. So which is crazy, right? So you can tell that it's very, very hard to get into these industries. It's very, very competitive. There's a lot of people that are applying. Now let's talk about one more company, 3 million applications a year and less than 0.3% accepted. That company is Google, right? So Google is very, very, very hard to get into. Now, when you look at all of these, numbers and companies that I've mentioned, it's not just about your GPA anymore. It's not about if you went to Harvard or not, or it doesn't matter if you did, these 3 internships, or, you did this volunteer work in some part of the world. None of that is, basically the thing that differentiates you anymore, right? Those things are just table stakes. What's important is all the other things you do. How do you push the platform? How do you go beyond the platforms that are provided to you? How do you network? How do you basically showcase your personality to the right people at the right time, ahead of time, right? So just getting these jobs is not as simple as it was before. It's actually become a lot harder. And just having the right resume or the right brands on your resume doesn't cut it anymore. So what does a good candidate, a candidate who ultimately gets the job need? So first thing I want to mention is 50% of getting any of these jobs is luck, right? It is actually luck. And what I mean by luck is not just like, hey, maybe I'll get it, maybe I won't. No. All of us who are on this webinar right now or this workshop right now, we're already very lucky. So I just want to mention to you guys is if you think about the grand scheme of things in life, if you look at all the people your age, there's millions of people just like yourself who probably don't even have internet, right? Or were born in just the wrong country, wrong part of the world and don't have resources like this. So by default, we are all very, very, very lucky. And that's the first part you guys should know. Then if you keep on adding into that, the variables that have been part of our lives, for example, you had an opportunity to go to school. Maybe you had an opportunity to go to university. Maybe you had an opportunity to go to the right university among like a top 100 university in the world. So all of those things make you a super, super, super special person. So we should always look back at that and say, you know what, I'm very lucky. So that's a great thing. Now, even with all of that luck, you could be doing all the right things and still not get the job. But having this mindset, knowing this is important. But 50% is luck. The other 50% is in your court. And this is the part that I teach, right? This is the part where a lot of people take this lightly and they don't take care of the things that are in their control. And those are the only things that are in our control. So just to give you a high level concept of what those things are, things like preparing for your recruiting, things like building the best resume ever, which is, in my opinion, the most important document in your life. Things like, networking way before, you need a job, networking when you don't need it, networking when, you're just out there meeting people, random people, just exploring and, spreading your brand to as many people as possible. And then finally, crushing those interviews. And you don't crush interviews by, knowing the technical questions or knowing, the answer to some riddle or the answer to some tough questions. You can be in an interview where they can ask you a bunch of super hard technical questions and you could answer all of them incorrectly. But if you connect with the interviewer the right way on a personal level, there's a very high chance you will get the job. So based on all that stuff, 50% stuff that's in your control is the stuff that matters. So I want to start this webinar, this workshop with a story, right? And it's going to take a little bit of time, but I want to kind of walk you through my story so you and I can relate and you can understand where I come from and what I do and why I do it. So let's start that story. First thing, those of you who are joining from Asia, I'm actually from Pakistan, right? So ethnically, I'm Pakistani. I was born there. I was raised there. That's my mom. That's my family, my sister. Obviously, back then I had hair and I don't anymore, but that's life. So that's where I grew up. And around 2000, I immigrated to Canada. And when I immigrated to Canada, new opportunities. And in high school, I was a smart kid, nerdy kid who loved math, loved sciences, was good at the numbers, right? And based on that, my parents were like, look, if you're good at numbers, you should be an engineer. That's just how life worked back in Pakistan, right? So taking their advice, I ended up taking engineering at University of Toronto. And not just any engineering, because you have ego and you have this competition mentality when you're coming out of high school, I chose aerospace engineering, which was the toughest engineering in Canada at the University of Toronto in a program called engineering science. Now, I wasn't passionate about engineering. I thought I was going to be building robots and planes all the time, but nothing could be further than that. So anyways, I joined this program and I start freshman year at University of Toronto. And by this time, by the way, just to let you know, my high school average, the most recent average I had in high school was 98%, right? So I'd never seen something lower than a 95 in my life. And that, false narrative basically, or that false signal, in my opinion, gives you a real shock when university begins. So in my first test that I got back in college, I got a 45%. And I couldn't believe it. When I saw it, I was like, 45%? Like, this must have been a 95. Like, looks like a 95, probably isn't a 45. But the truth is, it was actually a 45. And I couldn't believe it. But the reality of that matter of fact is that, in those situations when you get to college, you actually start competing with the world. You're not just competing with your local neighborhood kids who go to high school with you. You're actually competing with everybody from India to China to the US to UK. They're all coming to the same university and you're competing with the world's talent. And you truly find out your own place. Not only do you find out your own place, you also find out, hey, maybe I'm not going to be a good aerospace engineer, or maybe this is not my calling. But unfortunately, a lot of us, we have a lot of ego, we have a lot of pressure from friends and family, and we never quit, right? We keep on going and we keep on taking these courses and these degrees. But anyways, I want to fast forward that. I, stuck with the degree, didn't quit, and started continuing on. But the big game changer point in my life came in my third year. So in my junior year summer. And in the junior summer, my internship was at this company called Accenture. So a lot of engineers, when they, get to a point where they want to do business, let's just say, or be part of the business field, they'll join a consulting company. So McKinsey, Deloitte, those kind of companies. Accenture is one of them. And at Accenture in that summer, luck would have it that I got placed for my client was an investment bank. So there's an investment bank in Canada who was the client of Accenture, and I basically joined them. Now, for this summer, it was the first time ever I saw, what an investment banking environment is like. Even though I wasn't an investment banker, I was just helping on the client side, on the consulting side. And it opened my eyes, and I saw all these young guys who were wearing amazing suits, and they had nice fancy watches and cool shoes. And I was like, man, those guys are the cool guys. I don't want to be a consultant. But I spoke to my friend about it. I was like, hey man, I want to be like those kids over there who are the investment banking analysts. And he's like, no, you're a dumbass. You can't be those guys. You have a low GPA. You're an aerospace engineer, never get hired, blah, blah, blah. Long story short, the spark had been lit. The fire had been basically started. And my passion was you know what? I'm going to at least take a shot. I'm going to try. So that summer when I finished the Accenture internship, and to remind you guys, this was 2008. So we're going through a recession right now. This was a recession back then when I was graduating from college, or in my junior year of college. So Accenture internship finished. I'm really excited. And my goal was I'm going to take that internship offer and I'm going to convert it to a full-time offer. And that full-time offer I'm going to use to then recruit at some of the top investment banks. But luck would have it, guess what? Accenture, reached out to me after the internship. And out of the 6 interns who were in the Toronto office, I was the only one who didn't get a return offer. So perfect planning. And I still remember it to this day, that moment when I got that call, because I was like, you know what, that internship's in the back. For sure I have a full-time offer, but no, I didn't. And that's where I want to kind of mention to you guys this, when you guys will face, and you will face it, it's certain, failure and getting these rejections in life, it is certain. And they seem very big when you're, in the early parts of your career, but later on, they're not going to be that big. And in my opinion, when I see that moment in my life, which was not getting that return offer at Accenture, I believe that this will only make me stronger. And the good part about this is, if you look back at it right now, if I had gotten that Accenture offer and started at Accenture, let's just say, then this workshop would not be happening, right? Nobody wants to come learn why it's amazing at working at Accenture. So luckily didn't happen, and here we are. So anyways, so I took that opportunity, and I was like, you know what? No worries. I don't have a full-time offer coming up. I don't have a full-time job when I graduate. What is the next best thing I can do? And the next best thing I could do was apply to business schools, because there were no job opportunities back then. Nobody was hiring, especially they weren't hiring a 3.0 aerospace engineer to be an investment banker. So taking from that, I started applying to a bunch of business schools. I took the GMAT. I didn't do well in it. I got 680. For those of you who are wondering, anything lower than 700 is not great. And there's another lesson for you. Like, look, just because you got a low GMAT score, it's not the end of the world. It's just life goes on. There's other ways to fix it. But mine was 680, if you're wondering. So I took that, I applied to a bunch of business schools, and I wanted to get an MBA program. So I applied to, I think, NYU, LSE, a couple of other schools that I thought I could get in, and I got rejected across the board. The only school I got waitlisted on was UCLA. And they put me on the wait list, and my chances were basically, zero, almost zero. And in those moments, I want to tell you guys the next kind of like pro tip is this. In life, you will be put on the wait list, or you'll be rejected, or you'll hear a no a lot. And when that happens, I want you to always double check. What I mean by that is, when you see a closed door of a restaurant, you walk up to it, it says closed. You always kind of peek and see maybe there's someone in there, right? You knock, maybe you try to open the door. Maybe you see maybe the second door is open. That's the same concept with recruiting and opportunities. You'll see a lot of closed doors, but the closed doors are not always, closed. They will open, or they may be a secondary opening to them. So I want you to double check all closed doors. And that was my mindset back then. And what I did was I reached out to UCL and I said, hey, look, I see that you guys have put me on the wait list, and I get it. Makes sense. I know I don't have the credentials for being in your program, but what can I do? What can I do to improve my chances to get off that wait list and in your program? And they gave me an option. They're like, okay, in your final semester in school, go crush and get a better GPA and get an internship before the UCLA program starts. So I was like, great. Now I know exactly what to do. And if I keep, my end of the bargain, you will keep your word. And that's what I did. For the final semester of University of Toronto, I dropped all the hard courses, the tough courses that I would never need. And I picked a bunch of easy courses, right? Courses not only that were easy, but courses that I was passionate about, like entrepreneurship, those kind of courses. And guess what? I crushed them, and it improved my GPA. And that's how I got to a 3.0 GPA, right? So before this, I was at like a 2.8 or a 2.7. Long story short, I get my GPA up, and UCLA says, okay, you did well in your final semester. That's a good thing. Now get that internship. And how I got that internship is through networking. My forte is, people and connecting with them and, convincing them to hire me and give me a shot. And I convinced my, best friend. He wasn't my best friend back then, but, he was close enough. And I said, hey, look, I know you're interning at RBC, which is a bank in Canada. And they had like this, winter internship, which was available from the months of like August to December. So I joined that, and it was a trading internship. So anyways, I checked the boxes for UCLA, and that got me into UCLA. So that's the thing. Now, another point I always want to mention to you guys in this situation is this. A lot of people, don't even apply to opportunities. So think about it this way. Like I said, 10,000 people apply to Harvard Business School. I actually think 100,000 people would want to apply to Harvard Business School, but a lot of them don't, because they don't think they'll get in, right? They don't take the shot. So the one thing I want to mention to you guys, there's always a 1% chance that you may get in. Maybe they make a mistake and let you in, right? So always take the shot. You never know, right? If I didn't apply to UCLA, I wouldn't be sitting here, because that was the first kind of like, stepping stone to my journey. So in your life, if you get an option to submit an application, if it takes a couple of hours of work, do it, apply. It's the right thing to do. So always take that shot. So anyways, I get to UCLA, and UCLA's program starts in January. And in life, you'll get a bunch of second chances, right? In a lot of things, you'll get your second chances. But when you get your second chances, you got to remember, you got to go all in on second chances, right? Very, very rarely will you ever get a third chance. Second chance is basically your last chance. And when you get those chances, you cannot leave anything, on the floor. You got to leave everything on the floor, and you got to basically not take it for granted and turn every stone. And for me, UCLA was like, okay, you know what? I'm in the business school. I'm not in the MBA program. I'm still in a master's of financial engineering program. But this is my chance to network and connect with everyone and anyone who ever went to UCLA or lives in California or lives anywhere around the world who has some connection to UCLA and some connection to investment banking. So I basically started networking with everyone and anyone I could find. I didn't care if they were 40 years older than me and CEO of some company in Tokyo, but they went to UCLA, or they went to the smallest investment bank and worked there for just one summer and got fired, but still had some experience. So everyone was fair game. So I basically use that mindset, and the mindset there is the best day to network was yesterday. So the second best day is today. And networking is the most important thing, right? Resume is great. I know that's an important skill. Interviewing like a pro is awesome. But in life, networking, because life is a people business, right? You got to connect with people. You got to, convince people. You got to motivate people. People is everything you do. Unless you live on Mars, that's the only time you will be alone. But other than that, you have to be a people-centric person. And networking is that. And the best part about networking is you got to start it when you don't need it, right? You got to always be connecting and giving to people and connecting with them. So for me, my whole goal was like every day I'm going to email like 10 people from the alumni directory from UCLA. And if even one of them replies, that's a day well spent. And hundreds of people replied to me and taught me what I'm teaching you today, right? That's how I got closer and closer to my opportunity. So moving from there, I started applying to, different jobs, different companies. And in the summer of UCLA is when you get that internship, right? This is when you have an internship in the summer of the program. And my mindset was like, look, I'm going to do all the right things. I'm going to end up at Goldman Sachs for the summer. I'm going to make $50,000 to $60,000 in that summer. And guess what? I'm going to pay off half my tuition and all my loans, and life will be great. Again, that was the perfect plan. It didn't work out that way. Every bank that I applied to, bulge brackets, tier 1 banks, tier 2 banks, none of them gave me even a shot, right? But then, this is very disappointing. I get it. And you're going to face the same as well in life. The things you really, really want may not come to you on day one. But guess what? You can't stop there. You got to keep on going down that, food chain. So if tier 1 banks don't like you or tier 1 companies don't want to hire you, go to tier 2. Tier 2 doesn't work, go to tier 3. Keep on going down until you get an opportunity, until you get that ticket to the ballpark. That's all that you're looking for. So for me, I started at the Goldman Sachs of the world. I came down so much that I was literally interviewing at like companies with like 2 guys in a chair. That's how small of these companies were. And that's where I got hired. And it wasn't even a paid opportunity. It was a volunteer opportunity to work for these 2 guys in LA. And it was a remote job where I basically used my computer over the summer to do some like desktop research for them. But the benefit was it was 1 inch closer to my dream job, right? No brand, no, cool business card. Girls aren't like, damn, I got to date Sherjan because he's working for those 2 guys. Nobody's like looking at me, but it's a step forward. So you don't start at the top of the hill. You don't start at Google. You don't start at McKinsey. You don't start at Goldman Sachs. You start somewhere, and generally it's usually at the bottom of the hill, and you slowly climb up. So I took that internship. I finished that internship over the summer, and then September came around, and this is when full-time recruiting was going to take off. And I was like, you know what? Again, this is my final chance of getting my dream job. The reason I came to UCLA, the reason I did all these things. Now I've fixed my GPA as well. So there's no excuse of, not getting in, and I have to make it in. But guess what? Every bank who I was interviewing with, right, had candidates who were interviewing as well, my competition, who had a much better summer experience. A lot of candidates were coming from JP Morgan. There were candidates coming from McKinsey and Credit Suisse and other firms. And they all had great GPAs, and they were the right age for the job. So I was automatically not a top tier candidate. And again, guess what? Every company that I applied to, every bank from Morgan Stanley, Goldman Sachs of the world, each one of them did not give me even a first round interview. So this is where I want to, tell you guys my most important mindset. And that is that every no gets you closer to your next yes. Now, I know Mark Cuban said this a couple of years ago, but I've been saying this for 11 years, right? So I want to take credit for this. But anyways, you guys get my point. There's a lot of failure in life, and failure is certain. And when you get these rejections, when you hear these no's, I don't want you to feel down about it. All I want you to take it as training. Think of it as a learning experience, an opportunity that, okay, here's why I didn't get it. What are the reasons? Why didn't it happen the way I wanted it to happen? And learn from it. It will give you battle wounds. It'll give you, actual experience. It'll train you, and you won't make those mistakes again. And it'll just make you a better person about figuring out what doesn't work for you. On top of that, when you hear these rejections, the more you hear them, it's good for you because it actually trains your mind. It trains, like, maybe I don't want to be in a bulge bracket bank. Maybe I want to work for a boutique bank. Maybe I want to work for a small startup versus a big company like Google. Maybe I don't fit in those places. So every no gets you closer to your next yes. And this is also true from a probability perspective. The more no's you hear, you're getting 1 inch closer to your next yes. So I learned, took that mindset and I said, okay, fine, no worries. I'm not getting interviews with, these banks that I really want to work at. How can I improve my chances? And this is where I want to bring you to my next mindset that changed the game for me. In life, there's a lot of competition, especially in these industries, like I mentioned to you. And if you're competing for these industries in the wrong ecosystem, and you're making it harder for yourself, you're not going to get in. So I was in LA. Who was my competition? My competition was other kids from UCLA, from USC, from Stanford, from Berkeley. All those kids are applying for the same jobs on the West Coast. Similarly, if I wanted to, further decrease my chances, I can apply to jobs in New York, where my competition would be MIT, Harvard, Wharton, Cornell, all these schools, right? But guess what? Where my competition would be, I guess I would, win if my competition could have been changed. And that's in Toronto. Because in Toronto, I knew that if someone saw my resume, which I knew was way better now, given that I had, networked with so many people who had mentored me and fixed my resume to be, like world class, let's just say, and compared it with, another kid from, Toronto or from Ryerson or from Ivy or Queen's, some other universities in Toronto, I would definitely have an edge there because UCLA would be considered a better brand in a global perspective in Toronto than it would be considered in the US. So guess what I did? I skipped 1 week of classes at UCLA in September. I flew to Toronto and I snuck into these info sessions as a current University of Toronto student. Now, I wouldn't recommend you do it, but I did it and I don't like to lie, and that's the hustle in me, right? So I snuck in and I dropped my resume to 5 banks that hire in Canada. And I basically said, you know what, here's who I am. I really want this job, and that's my passion. That's my hustle. So out of the 5 banks, one of the banks basically didn't give me an interview, but the other 4 did, right? And that was my first breakthrough into at least getting, in that chair, that interview chair for my potential dream job. So I get to that and I get my first offer from Bank of Montreal, which is a smaller bank in Canada in their investment banking division in metals and mining, right? So that was the first opportunity I ever got. And I was super happy, right? Literally happiest guy in the world, finally made it with all that background. But this is where you need to keep on going. And this is where I want to mention to you guys the next thing, which is recruiting is actually just like dating. So a lot of you, I'm sure, have been on dates, you like someone, and maybe you like someone who is super cute or super attractive, but she or he doesn't like you back, right? Now, no worries, but this is where it gets interesting. Let's say you really like this person. Let's say they're a perfect 10. But then you start dating a few other people who are not perfect 10s. They're like 6s and 7s and maybe 8s. And guess what? The more you start dating over there and your brand starts exploring those other options, this one person who you really like will start like looking at you and start be like, hey, you know what? They start getting that FOMO. So this is just like how these industries work as well, right? So if you have an opportunity from one bank or one consulting firm, but you really want to work at McKinsey or you really want to work at Goldman Sachs, guess what? Get a bunch of these other opportunities and tell Goldman Sachs, hey, look, your boy's ready. So that's how you can get them to be excited. So that's exactly what I did. I took that opportunity from Bank of Montreal, that offer, went back to LA and I said, hey guys, I have an offer. Please give me an interview. Trust me, this thing is good. And if you give me a shot at an interview, I will crush it. So the one bank that gave me an opportunity was a boutique bank called Houlihan Lokey. And Houlihan Lokey invited me to their super day. I crushed the interview there and I got my job at Houlihan Lokey. So that's, how I broke into US investment banking. So let me just pause there and let you know that, look, it's a step-by-step process, right? Like you don't start at the top of the hill. Right now, I'm kind of like middle of the hill, right? Let's just say it's middle of the hill, but still there's more room to grow, right? And I still haven't even started working. So this is where I want to mention to you the final mindset. And this mindset should stay with you throughout your journey, even when you're recruiting or when you're later on in your life and you're a professional, seasoned professional. And that is always be grateful, but never be satisfied. What that means is, look, it's very hard to get to where you are, and you don't do it alone. Your friends, your girlfriend, your boyfriend, your cat, your mom, your dad, everybody, they've all been there for you to get to where you are. So you've got to be grateful. Even the companies, the people, the people who gave you the offer, the HR lady, the person at the reception, everybody, all those people you got to be grateful for. But then you can't ever be satisfied. The day you become satisfied, you'll become complacent and you'll not rise. And people will see that, you will see it, and you'll just be like, you know what, bills are getting paid, life is fine. So always have that dream job, the dream goal, whatever you're passionate about, always on top of your mind. And for me, that dream job was joining Morgan Stanley's tech investment banking team. And why is that? So this was around 2011, 2012. Morgan Stanley's tech team, which sits in Menlo Park, right? The headquarters for that is Menlo Park, California, is the number one, tech investment banking group in the world, right? There's about 50 to 60 bankers that work there. And it's a small group in the suburbs of San Francisco. So it's not even in the city. And they do all the top IPOs, from like Facebook's IPO to, Uber's of the world to whatever. Like every top IPO you've ever seen or M&A deal comes out of that group. And I'd seen a lot of people that had joined that group from LinkedIn and stuff. And they're all either from Stanford or Harvard, Wharton, or Berkeley, right? They all have top-notch GPAs. They're the best of the best from their ecosystems. So my dream was like, one day I want to work there. That would be the ultimate job for me. So how do I get in? So the way I got in is this, and I'll show you this final part of this story is this. I went back to my alumni directory, right? So went back to the UCLA alumni directory, which I knew, every inch of. And I found the oldest person I could find from Morgan Stanley who had gone to UCLA. So I reached out to this gentleman who's an MD, managing director in New York. His name is John. And I emailed John at 3 a.m, LA time, which is 6 a.m, New York time. And I wrote a short email saying, hey, John, I'm Sherjan, UCLA, grad like yourself, currently working at Houlihan Lokey, but really, passionate about joining Morgan Stanley or a bulge bracket. My resume is attached, would love to connect with you. Short email, very simple. And he replied 10 minutes later, which is 6:10 a.m. New York time, and said, like your resume, talk to Lisa, right? Now, I don't know who Lisa is, but Lisa was another banker who worked with John. Lisa reached out to me the next day. Lisa and I had a great conversation. Lisa is like, look, you're good, but we're not hiring right now. And that's okay. That's life. A lot of times you'll hear no's, but like I said, they're not permanent. So always be grateful and be like, hey, thanks so much. I appreciate it. No worries. I'll check back in 6 months. So when I said that, she's like, but there's a group on the West Coast who's looking for an analyst. I'm like, which group? She's like, Morgan Stanley Tech. And I'm like, oh my God, yes. And she's like, do you want to interview? I'm like, yes, please drop my resume to them. Can I just get a shot? And she did that. So she passed my resume to Morgan Stanley Tech. And the next day I had a chat with this lady named Nicole. So Nicole called me, Nicole had an interview, went well. And then this is where the story gets really interesting. And it's the final part of the story. The next week, I was supposed to go to training for Houlihan Lokey in New York. So I'm in LA. I'm supposed to go to New York for training. And it's a full week-long training, 2-week-long training, actually. In the second week of that training, I get a call from Morgan Stanley to come to San Francisco for a day for final round interviews. And in those moments, right, when you get that one opportunity, which is basically, it can either, be a 1 or a 0, meaning either you win it all and you win your dream job, or you literally risk it all and you lose everything that you worked for, because right now you're training with another firm in New York. And if they find out that you're skipping one full day of training to go interview with a competitor, guess what? You're going to get fired. And in these moments, my viewpoint on all of this is risk it all. If it's your dream, you got to risk it all, right? And in that phone call, when I got that call from Nicole saying, hey, can you come on Thursday for a final round? I said, yes, I will be there. So that Thursday, I flew to New York, San Francisco. I interviewed for like 5-6 hours. I flew back to New York the same day. I didn't tell my work, didn't tell HR, bunch of people looking for me. Friday was the last day of training in New York. They're like, what happened? I'm like, diarrhea, and you don't need to know about it. I lied. But guess what? I'm not going to say I'm interviewing at Morgan Stanley, right? So Friday was the last day of training, and we flew to LA after that. The weekend went by, and Monday I get a call from Morgan Stanley, and I have the job. So that's the story of how I broke into my, first dream job, which was Morgan Stanley, and not just any group in their top investment banking team as an analyst, And I really felt like an outsider the first few days because everybody was 10x smarter than me. They were, polished and, way better than me, but it was an amazing eye-opening opportunity for me. And this is what that office looks like on the outside. It doesn't look like, what you see on Times Square or Wall Street. It's a small suburban office, but they do the best work. And that's my business card. So just, at the end of the story, this was my first kind of break in. Then I broke into Google, a lot of other parts of that story that I want to share right now, we can share later on. And this is the first image I took on my first day as a noogler, which basically means new Googler. Back then, glass was a thing. Unfortunately, it doesn't exist anymore. And the team, which is called Capital G, was called Google Capital. And then finally, again, I'm one of those losers who went back to banking, for a second time. And this time I went to Hong Kong and I was a vice president there in investment banking. And probably the best years of my life were in Hong Kong. But anyways, that's the story. And I wanted you guys to hear the story so you guys understand that I am just like yourself. I've just done a few things right and a lot of things wrong. And hopefully you can learn from that and get motivated by it. All right, so looking at the time, so let's move on to tactics and techniques. So the first part I want to mention to you guys is the recruiting path, right? Now the recruiting path is important and how you get the job. Now, the three things I want to mention to you in this workshop is you need to have an amazing resume, right? And a lot of people take this lightly, but you can't. It is the most important document. It's the only document that's a living document, meaning that it actually gets updated every few months, right? Your degree doesn't get updated. Your transcripts don't get updated once they're final. Your resume gets updated all the time. So you need to take it seriously. The second reason why you need to take it seriously is it's your brand when you're not there, right? When you drop that resume into that pile of those 10,000 applicants, your resume needs to represent you when you're not there. So making sure that it is, stellar and world-class is super important. The second thing is once you've built that amazing resume, you got to get it in front of the right eyeballs. And that's where networking comes in, right? And I'm going to talk a little bit about that. And then finally, once you're in the interview room, sitting across from that person who doesn't know anything about you, how do you answer questions the right way? How do you answer it like, in a nice, eloquent way and thoughtful way, in a structured way that gets you closer to your job? And even if you do all those three things right, you're still not close. You still need a bunch of luck, right? Which is 50% of the game. And then you get to that dream job. All right. So first thing we're going to do, we're going to get into the resume. So I'm going to show you guys, first thing, I'm going to show you a resume template, show you guys a little bit of the format, and then and we'll dig a little bit deeper into it, and then we'll move from there. So let me just stop sharing this, and I will start sharing. Kivana, can we make sure everybody's with me and with a bunch of thumbs ups, I guess?
It looks like we're tracking with you.
All right, awesome, cool. I might be going a little bit fast, but I want to make sure people are learning as much as possible. So can you guys see this resume, which says university name? Kivana, can you see this?
It's not up just yet. Well, yep, we see you.
Okay, perfect. So is the resume, is the university name highlighted? Is this the same one?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. So guys, I'm going to walk you guys through a little bit of this resume template. Now, before we begin, I want you guys to understand is that some of you may be like, oh, my resume is just like this. It's on a white piece of paper with, black ink and life's fine. No, remember, these industries are super, super maniacal about format. That's the reason you get paid a lot, right? The reason you get paid a lot and you work in PowerPoint, Word, and Excel all day, all night for 20 hours of the day, actually, a lot of times, is because you build beautiful documents. A little bit of a mistake where you've missed a space bar, or your font size is wrong, or you're not using the right font, or you don't have the right spacing for the bullets. That is the difference between getting, from that 10,000, pile or 250,000 pile for Goldman Sachs into the pile that gets a shot at the interview. So do not take your resume lightly. It is the best 1 week worth of work that you will put into anything. So I want to kind of highlight that. Number one is that. Number two is format. Yes, content is important. What's in a resume is important, but what's more important than the content is the format. How does the resume look? And this goes back to the topic that I mentioned. Recruiting is just like dating. In dating, looks matter. If you're a good-looking, attractive person, higher chance you'll get more dates. But in the world of recruiting, your looks are your resume. So we got to make sure your resume looks beautiful. So being symmetric, being kind of evenly spaced, no flaws in it, it's key. That's important. So what you notice here is there's, and I go into detail obviously in my course, but I just kind of give you a highlight. It's a very evenly laid out resume. Every line has a certain specific font size and font style that I use. And there's a lot of techniques in there. So first technique that I want to mention to you guys is a resume is always one page. Your resume is never longer than one page. Barack Obama's resume is one page. And like, my high school cousin, one page. So it doesn't matter how much experience you have. One page is the only, length you'll get. So make sure every word matters on your resume. And then, the other thing you want to, look at your resume when you look at it, if you look at this, if you look at the formatting here, what you'll notice is the resumes are read from top to bottom and mostly on the left side of the page. So here, if someone reads this resume, they'll see, okay, Sherjan went to some university, studied aerospace, worked at some company name, some other company, and was an analyst. That's how they're reading it. And on average, a resume is read for about 5 to 6 seconds. That's it, right? That's the difference between you going from that 250,000 pile of resumes to, the ones that get an interview. So anyways, make sure you put a lot of effort into format. This is just a highlight about what, my format looks like. I have education on top, then experience, then extracurricular. You can, do it differently if you are a more seasoned professional. If you're a seasoned professional, put experience first, then education. And you don't really need to put high school. I'm just using it as a template to kind of show you. The next thing I want to mention to you guys, in the interest of time as well, just to cover it, is self-elimination. And that comes from GPA. If your GPA is lower than 3.4, I would highly recommend don't put it on the resume, right? The problem with that is, when you put a low GPA, lower than 3.4, people who work in these industries generally have high GPAs. And when they see someone with a lower GPA, like a 3.3 or a 3.2 or lower, they automatically bucket you as someone who is not smart or is not accomplished. But the truth is, there's a lot of reasons for not having a high GPA, right? For example, for me, I wasn't passionate about the degree I was in. I was just stuck in it and I couldn't leave, right? So if you have a low GPA, do not put it on your resume. But to counter that, you have to have other amazing things on your resume, right? So for me, for example, when I was in undergrad, I started a small business on the side, and that business was a photography studio. I'm very passionate about photography. I love doing it. I love photographing weddings. I even photographed my sister's wedding. So based on that, my resume, even though it didn't have the GPA on it, but it showed that I started a small business, a photography business. So whatever you're passionate about, maybe it's printing t-shirts and selling on Shopify. Maybe it's just being an influencer on Instagram, whatever it is. I don't care what it is. If you have a low GPA, tell us why you have it by showing something else that you've done in an amazing way. All right, so that's the second piece, which is do not self-eliminate yourself by putting in a low GPA or even putting in things like, hey, I need visa sponsorship if I want to work there. You don't need to disclose all these extra information so someone doesn't bucket you. Final thing I want to mention to you guys is numbers. Especially for these jobs, numbers are a big part of the hiring process. They want to hire quantitative people because there's a lot of math that's used in these industries. And I want to make sure that whatever you're doing, even if you're working as a cashier at McDonald's right now, or you're an investment banker at Goldman Sachs, you have numbers everywhere around you. But the one tip I want to mention to you is every time I've asked someone to put a number on their resume, so if you look here, if I ask someone to put a number like, hey, can you put some numbers on your resume? Those resumes come back with 10% on it. Like, so everybody uses this number 10%, some magical number 10% somehow. And I just don't know how that's possible. In reality, nothing ever happens at 10%. That's too fake of a number. So if, for example, you do all the numbers and analysis and you find out that whatever you did in your life ended up being 10%, let's just say you had a small business and you increased revenue by 10%, I would change it to 9%, right? Lower it. Don't, exceed the actual reality of it. So actually lower it and use a number that's more believable. So anyways, that's just some of the tricks that I use, or tactics, I guess, when you build your resume, which make it, create that difference about your resume getting picked or not. So anyways, that's just one idea. I'm going to share with you guys as a bonus my own resume. Kevin, can you guys see my other resume right now or no? Actually, let's see this if I can.
Let's see. Yes.
All right. So here we go. This one you can probably see now. Does it say Sherjan here?
It's loading up. We can see it.
Awesome. So guys, just to stay true to my word, this is my own personal resume. I've obviously omitted some personal details in here, but it shows you exactly how my resume looks like. So if I apply for a job now, and I have to do this, all the time, even though I'm not looking for a job right now, but if I need it, it's always updated. You can see that I start with my startup experience first. This is my, main business. Then I have a business that failed a few months ago, which was a software company. I put that over here. Then I have my corporate experience. So being a vice president at Morgan Stanley, working at Google, And then, my dream job only gets like 3 or 4 lines. That dream job that I worked so hard for, it's probably going to get deleted in the next few months because I'm going to have other things that are going to go up there. And then finally, my education. You can see I don't put my undergrad GPA. I do put my grad GPA, which is 3.6, and then additional on the bottom. So just to give you an idea, if you just look at it visually, this thing looks, pretty cute in my opinion. And if I see this resume, I'll be like, you know what? The guy put in some effort into building the most important document of his life. So, he deserves at least a shot at an interview. All right, team. So moving on, let's move on to the deck and move on to the next section. So we talked about the resume and I gave you guys the resume demo. Let's move on to networking. So when you think about getting a job in these industries, a lot of times people only aim for official campus recruiting, right? They'll aim for the time when, businesses are going to come to campus and they're going to seek candidates, or, they're going to do that official campus recruiting. But that recruiting time, usually when it happens, is usually September. That's usually too late, right? By that time, it's already too late. And I'll tell you why. Let's take an example here for example, like Goldman Sachs. So Goldman Sachs, let's just say for New York, for the summer, has 10 internship spots and they hire 10 interns. So they recruit around the world, whatever, they get 10 interns. At the end of the summer, what happens is of those 10 candidates that were interns who were in the internship program at Goldman Sachs, 6 of those interns get a return offer, meaning they get a full-time offer to come join Goldman Sachs after the summer's over and after they graduate university. So those 6 students or 6 interns secure their offers and 4 spots are still remaining, okay? But then what happens is before school year starts, there's something called an accelerated interview process, right? Let's call it accelerated recruiting process, ARP. What happens is Goldman Sachs reaches out internally to all their employees who are in investment banking, let's just say, and tells them, hey guys, do you know anybody who would be a good fit for our team? And what that does is it creates this invite-only process. That's a secret process that most people don't know about. And those people then get invited who have networked in advance and know someone at Goldman Sachs or knows an alumni at Goldman Sachs or whatever it is, gets invited to the process. In that situation, 30 or so candidates get invited because they've networked. And of those 30 candidates, 3 candidates are given an offer to join. So now if you add this up, in total, we had 10 spots. 6 were given offers from the internship, and then 3 were given offers from the accelerator process. After the accelerator process, this is when the official campus recruiting process begins. And the funny part about official campus recruiting is this one job that's left, this one spot that's left. This is the spot that goes on LinkedIn. This is the spot that is posted on goldmansachs.com/careers. This is the spot that's posted on all the top schools and their business websites and all that stuff. So in all of those things, this is where all of that ends up being. And in grand scheme of things, what happens is you end up realizing that the chances of getting a job at Goldman is a lot harder when you're aiming for campus recruiting. And it's a lot easier when you're aiming for these things. Your chances are drastically lower here. So how do you fix that? So just to give you a timeline here, let's assume that you want to actually interview at Goldman and get a job at Goldman for full-time in June of 2022. To target for June of 2022 full-time, you need to have official campus recruiting done in September 2021. Now, to get access to official campus recruiting, there's a better way to do it is accelerated recruiting process, which is August 2021, like I just mentioned. This is what you should be targeting. If you want to even increase your chances, get a summer internship of summer 2021. But remember, even for summer internships, there's an official campus recruiting, which happens in January. And even for that, there's an accelerated recruiting process in October. So if you want to get that full-time job at Goldman 2 years from now, you need to start networking today so you can get invited to the accelerated recruiting process. All right, so that should give you an idea of how difficult this is and what times to focus on. All right, finally, I just want to mention interview. I show you guys a technique about interview tactic. This is my most important technique that I teach in my course, and it's going to help you. A lot of times when someone asks you a question in an interview, they'll be like, hey, Jenny, tell me about, let's just say an iPhone, right? Let's say that's the question. What most people make a mistake is they'll just ramble on for hours talking about one topic. So they'll be like, oh, an iPhone is this, it has a colored screen. The latest one is iPhone 11. You can charge it using, a lightning cable, blah, blah, blah. And then Jenny will naturally stop talking about that topic when she runs out of information. So she hits something called the information barrier, right? But that doesn't mean there's not more information available on that topic. There's definitely is additional information available on that one topic. But the problem is she's basically exhausted all of her knowledge And now she's sitting duck, and the interviewer is going to ask her questions now, and she's going to get stumped. So the right technique of answering interview questions is by making it a conversation and not turning it into an interrogation. The way you do that is by short answers, short burst of answers, and going back and forth. So I'll give you an example. If someone asks you, tell me about an iPhone, be like, oh yeah, an iPhone is a phone by Apple. It's a smartphone, and the latest version is iPhone 11. Period. Stop. That's it. Now what you've done is you've answered the first stage of question. Now the interviewer will be like, okay, great. Can you tell me more about the screen? Awesome. Yeah, happy to. The screen is 6 inches. It's a colored touchscreen, multi-touch, and you can install a lot of apps on it, and it's beautiful day and night. Something simple. Again, a 15-second burst. You keep on doing that, and you will never hit the information barrier, right? And that's the key thing. The other benefit of doing this is in an interview, you only have 30 minutes, right? Because you have 30 minutes, you want to waste as much time as possible in a good way, right? So waste as much time as possible by answering as many questions correctly. So just to give you a quick example on that, we'll take two candidates, Jenny and Bob. On the left side, you have number of questions attempted. On the vertical axis, you have the difficulty of that question. So the more questions you attempt, harder they get. That makes sense. So Jenny uses the technique I just showed you. She goes back and forth, wastes time, and stays to the easy questions. But Bob is trying as many at-bats as possible. So Bob is basically trying his best to answer everything he can. What ultimately happens is at the end of the interview process, Bob has attempted 20 questions, has gotten 10 right and 10 wrong, right? Jenny has only attempted 10 because she's slow and strategic about it, got 10 of them right, the same 10 as Bob, but got 0 wrong. Now, at the end of the interview process, they're going to get all the feedback about Bob and Jenny, and this is what the feedback is going to be. Hey, yeah, Bob's a good guy, but he got half the questions wrong. But Jenny, oh, Jenny's awesome. Jenny got all the questions right. The truth is both Bob and Jenny got the same questions right, but Jenny's smart. She's been using this technique. So anyways, use it for your advantage. All right, team. Kevin, should I move on to the last piece? Are we good on time?
It's 2:57 right now, so you can move on to the last piece.
Okay, cool. So guys, I've been doing these workshops and webinars for the last 10, 11 years. Predominantly, these were offline events. Given COVID, I've converted all of my knowledge into online format. So historically speaking, I started this coaching mentorship network 10 years ago, and it started small. It started in Toronto, slowly grew and went around the world. So I had 12 events that I would coach, on an annual basis at the leading universities and just mentor students just like yourself or young professionals just like yourself. And all of this was hosted at leading universities like Harvard, all the way to UCLA and Berkeley and LSE. And this is my passion. So I've been doing this for a while. And through this, I've met thousands and thousands of students. This is just one of the photos of the students that I've mentored over the last 10 years. And I'm really proud of them. And just to show you guys, how proud I am, the thing that I'm most proud of is not the Morgan Stanley or Googles of the world. It's all these letters. I kid you not, I have thousands of these letters that I get from these students that I have collected over the years. And I haven't read all of them yet. I read one on every podcast that I do. But basically what I've done is I've combined all of that information, all that knowledge that I have, and I've put it into this one course. It's called Breaking Through. It is my life's best work. I've spent a lot of time over the last few months converting all that knowledge into this course. And it's basically the guide to helping you get the job, not do the job. And that's the important part. I don't want you to take this course if you want to become a better investment banker or a better consultant. This is just to help you get the job. So what's included in the course is, first of all, is anybody who's taken it and all the thousands of students who've taken it, they've broken into the top investment banks like Goldman Sachs, Morgan Stanley. They've broken into top consulting and accounting firms, McKinsey, BCG, Bain, even the top accounting firms like PwC, EY. Same with like private equity and venture capital. My students have broken into the top VC firms like Kleiner Perkins and Sequoia, and private equity firms like KKR. Because ultimately, think about it this way: it's not about what do you know from a technical perspective. It's about how good are you at connecting with humans. And these interview processes, people are trying to hire other good, interesting people. And same with technology and startups. So if you're interested in joining any of these companies, the same techniques can be used and implemented there. What's included in the course, just to give you a high level, is there's a 10-part course, 10 modules. I start with introduction, just to guys, give you a lay of the land. Then we go, dive deep into motivation. So today I gave you a little bit of motivation about the early parts of my journey, but then I go deep into it in module 2. Then there are 2 modules, dedicated for resume and cover letter, where we'll go line by line and build your actual resume. and literally font style by font style and size, everything is included in that. Then module 5 is fully on networking, how to get that resume that you've built, how to get that cover letter in front of the right people. And then finally, we get into tactics. Tactics basically means before the interview even starts, how do you, prepare for it? How do you behave in the interview? How do you reach out? How do you even dress for an interview? All those little things that are in your core, we got to get them right. Then module 7 is super detailed about questions that will be asked of you. So this includes things like, how to answer the most important question, which is tell me about yourself, or the second most important question, like, why do you want to join this company or this industry? Or even the hard questions like, why should we not hire you, right? All those things and how to best answer them in a strategic way. Then finally, even after the interview, it's not over. You got to have post-interview strategies, which is like, how do you reject an offer? How do you accept an offer? How do you shop different offers and get them to compete for you? All that stuff is included in there. And the final module is story time, where I have a lot of other stories which are from my recruiting journey and from other people's recruiting journeys. That's going to be helpful to you. And finally, it's a bonus module where I include all the templates for resume, cover letter, networking templates. I would recommend not using them because I want you to build your own resume from scratch. But if you need it, the templates are included. My resume is also included, which you can get ideas from. And then there's also a piece on how much money you make and some interesting topics in the bonus. Finally, there's tons and tons of content. There's over 10 hours of video, 138 lessons, downloadable templates. But most importantly, my goal in this is when you take my courses or my webinar workshops, whatever, I want you to leave a little bit better and become a better version of you, and which I call you 2.0. So with that, I just want to end the topic with this. For just the next few days, in partnership with Teachable, we brought the course price down. It's usually sells for $297, but just for a short period of time, selling for $199. And I think Kevon can talk more about it. If you guys are interested, go to teachable.com/Sherjan and check it out. Look at the content there and stuff, and you'll get a better idea. But ultimately, I don't want you to be, if you don't get into these industries and stuff, I don't want you to be disappointed. Life's long, the journey's long. So, stay focused on, achieving that in a long-term greedy format. And if you do break in, let's just say you get closer to your dream job, whatever it is, I'd love for you to send me a letter, just like I showed you here, right? Or shoot me an email. That's what keeps me going. I get really excited about it. But I just want to say thanks for that. All right, Kevon, over to you.
Thank you so much, Sherjan. You have a lot of questions, and we have about 13 minutes for questions, some of which you did answer. So a lot of people want to know about cover letters.
Okay.
And it looks like you have that covered in your course. So you guys can click on the button at the top of the page to get ahead and get registered for the course. And I'm sure he can go into more detail. Not sure if you want to give us a sneak peek on what you have in there about cover letters.
Yeah, sure. So cover letters are important, but they're also not important. And the reason I say that is this: early part of your career, people will ask you to write a cover letter, and that's okay. I think they get super valuable later on. And for example, if I want to apply for a new cool company, I think a year ago, I applied to TikTok and I didn't get the job. But when I apply to a company like that, I'll email the CEO. And when I email the CEO, I'll write a very thoughtful letter, right? A thoughtful note. So a cover letter at a high level is just a short half-page letter, right? Which basically not only introduces yourself for a couple of lines, then it goes into your story. So the first big paragraph of your cover letter is your story. It's not longer than 4 or 5 lines. That's it. And then the third paragraph is why do you want to join that company, right? And that's another 3-4 lines. And finally, it's a simple thank you. I really appreciate you reading this letter, and I would love to be considered for a role in your company. So it's a short half-page document, right? Something crisp, something that describes who you are in terms of your story, your background, and then finally why you want to work there. And the key part about the story piece is that's the most important question that I teach about. Whenever someone asks you, hey, tell me about yourself, that story has to be exciting. It has to be something that has emotion and it has passion in it, right? Not like, oh, I always wanted to be an investment banker, I always wanted to work at Google. No, it has to be something personal. So find that personal thing and put it into those 4 lines.
Perfect. Another question is, do you find that a summary for resume is not needed?
Yeah, summary is useless, right? A lot of people put a summary on the top of their resume or an objective, and it says, hey, I want to get a job. That is the worst thing to do. Don't waste space on that because we all know what the objective is. The objective is to, you're applying for a job, and summary is not needed. Like I said, they spend only 5 seconds on a resume, and they'll just look at the highlights of the key headings of your sections, right? Like which companies you worked at, which school you went to. But as long as the format's beautiful, that's great. But if you put in a summary paragraph, it basically destroys the format. It takes 3 to 4 lines. You basically wasted a lot of real estate. So don't do that.
That's good to know. I think I had a summary on mine, so I'll go in there and change that myself. Another question we have is, how do you feel about snail mail?
Snail mail. So I think snail mail doesn't work as well anymore because you can't really track it. You can't really figure out if they read it and how are they going to reply to you. Like they're going to, open up their inbox and, type in your email address. It's just like too much friction involved in it. The only people I use snail mail for are like the 4 to 5 key mentors. So in my networking module, I talk about how to tier your network. The tier 1 network that I have, which is the most important people in my life in terms of outside of family, obviously, those people I'll write snail mail for, right? Like I'll sometimes write a letter or a card at the end of the year. And one of the things I do, and this is a pro tip that you guys can use, is that from my tier 1 and tier 2 network, at the end of the year, December 31st, I have pre-scheduled emails that go out to about 110, 120 people, right? And these are individual emails I've written, right? Individual emails that I've written over the last week of the year, just thanking them for the year, wishing them Happy New Year, individual letters that go out in email format. And it's a big win for a lot of people and brings me back on their radar as well and them on mine.
Perfect. So Meg, I see that you have a question. So feel free to ask your question and I'll definitely get to it. We have about 5 or 6 minutes. So we have some people who are feeling a little bit intimidated here. So they want to know, is the school applicable for someone who's been out of school for 15 years, no 4.0 GPO? How do they navigate this?
Yeah. So look, I'll be honest with you, right? Like it's gonna be a lot harder, right? If you're 15 years out of school, and you've been in the work industry and stuff, and you're trying to catch this train, let's say the train of investment banking, consulting, and accounting, it's going to be a lot harder because these industries are very structured. They hire only a certain periods of time, and if they do hire laterally, right, it's also hard. So I don't want to lie to you. I like being honest with people, and I don't want to give you false hope. It is going to be challenging. But having said that, the course is helpful in a way where it'll make you a better interviewer. It will, excite you, it'll energize you, it'll motivate you. All those things. So the next time, whenever you do go for a lateral opportunity, or you do go recruit for some other company, or even if you're trying to, get promoted within your own, organization, it is going to add that value to you. But the best value it adds to it are like folks who are, early parts of their career, either in undergrad or business school, or they're like in the first 5 to 6 years of their education, or 6 years of their career. That's where I would say it's the most relevant.
Perfect. And then we have Mark here who's asking, after the interview, do you send a thank you note? And if you do, what do you say in that thank you note?
Yes, that's a great question. I definitely do. I send thank you emails, and I always recommend sending them within 24 hours. When I used to recruit, I would send it from the, when I used to send handwritten notes back then, I would send it from the airport I would be interviewing at. So if I had an interview in San Francisco and I'm flying from LA, at the SFO, I would find the mailbox and drop in the notes. So the notes would get there. But now what I do is I'll send a thank you email within 24 hours and at the later part of the 24 hours. So let's say you have an interview at 10 a.m. on a Monday, send a thank you email by 10 a.m. on the Tuesday, but right before 10 a.m. on Tuesday. So send it at 9 a.m. Tuesday. The reason you want to do that is when someone interviews you, they're going to be interviewing a lot of other people on that same day. So your brand value is very high early on in the interview day when you interview with them. After that, that brand value goes down and you on their radar becomes lower and lower because now they've met another 20 people throughout the day. So, you, John, doesn't really, show up on their head. But 24 hours from there, if you bring back your brand on their radar by a quick note, a quick email, that's super helpful. And on that quick note, it's a short 3-liner. Hey, it goes like this. Hi, Jenny. Really awesome meeting you yesterday at Goldman Sachs. Thank you so much for taking the time. I really had a great time, chatting with you and learning more about the role and the opportunity. And just wanted to be super thankful for you taking the time. Thank you so much. Hopefully, looking forward to hearing from you. That's it. Don't need to talk about the economy and why the recession is this, that. BS is BS. So don't BS. Just be honest. Just be thankful. Be grateful and move on. It's just a gesture. Just check the box.
Right. You want them to be the first thing that come in the next morning.
Exactly.
Love that. Is there a certain major that consulting prefers? Do they prefer engineering majors with a high GPA?
Yeah, so I would say back in the day, there was definitely a preference for like business majors or majors like, in engineering who would, who would have problem solving skills. But now the world has changed, right? So in my opinion, any major is fair game. You could be history major, you could be art major, but some of the things they're looking for from a technical perspective is you got to have, problem solving skills. You got to be, quick on thinking on your feet. You got to be, a deep thinker, right? If I show you a problem, I want you to really be curious and inquisitive about it. Like, for example, let's say if I ask you, hey, how many planes take off at San Francisco International Airport on a daily basis? You can, like, some people can be like, 10,000. That's the wrong answer, even if it is the right number. The right answer is you go deep into thinking about why it would be a certain number, right? Why it should be like based on a lot of variables, like number of, how much time does it take for one plane to take off? How many planes can take off at the same time? How many runways are there? So someone who's a deep thinker and thinks about problems in multiple variables, that's the kind of person they're looking from a technical perspective. But most important, right? Most important, like I said, is 99% of the game is people skills, right? Showing your personality, smiling, connecting with them, making that eye contact, being really honest about, your passions, and not, being fearful about things that you have done wrong or times you've failed. That connection is what makes you interesting, because they know that anybody who's even making it to the interview process is already smart. They can learn the job. My job as an investment banker at Morgan Stanley, from an analyst to associate to VP, all I did was I added a few numbers in Excel, aligned a few logos on a PowerPoint slide. That's basically it. Or wrote a few Word documents. Anybody can do it. Like my mom's cat can do that, right? So it's not hard. So I wouldn't be worried about that other piece, like if my degree is right or not. I would focus on building your networks, building your relationships, building those bonds. That's going to get you that edge.
Perfect. Makes sense. And then Cindy asked, how should you best network to get into the ARP? For example, how to make a meaningful connection to get a referral without coming off as a user.
Yeah. So the first thing to ARP, just for those folks, it's the accelerated recruiting process, right? It's that secret, secret society, VIP only, backdoor to the club, let's just say. So those processes are rare, and the best way to get in is to meet the right people at these companies. The way I would do it is I would start now when you don't need to hire. So reach out to anybody and everyone, start building connections like, hey, I'd love to grab a coffee. I'd love to just introduce myself. I'd love to even have a 10-minute phone chat with you and just show my interest that I'm interested in your industry, and slowly start building that bond. Putting yourself in the right, ecosystems, like joining the right clubs on campuses. When you join the right sororities, fraternities, business clubs, whatever, right? Technical clubs, if you want to go into startups, those, people that are in those clubs ultimately graduate to joining those organizations. So those alumni exist. And that's how you start building those bonds, right? And remember, I understand that you don't want to come across as cheesy, like, oh, look, I'm trying to get something from this person. Everybody knows you're networking to get something ultimately. We get it. Everybody gets that piece. So just be honest about it upfront. When I reach out to someone and I cold email them, and I'll be like, I remember I emailed a person who was at Goldman Sachs Tokyo, and I don't speak any Japanese. And back then I used to live in LA. I reached out to him and I was like, hey, I know you're a UCLA alumni. I'm, currently at UCLA. I would love to connect with you. I'm super passionate about joining Goldman Sachs. And I would love like 5 to 10 minutes of your time just to get on a call, talk to you about, what I've been up to, and just say hi, right? So I'm being honest, I'm being direct, right? That's how you're going to build those initial relationships. And over time, this is not going to happen overnight. This is at least an 18 to 2-year process to get your brand to be super strong. So the earlier you can start, when you're a freshman, if you can start then, awesome, right? And if you are already graduated and it's a little bit late, no worries. Still there's time, right? Start putting yourself into situations to win that, to ask for that favor 2 years down the road. And in a lot of these situations, you'll have to give more than get. So the first 99, so I'll give you one quick side story. For Goldman Sachs, the people that helped me, I actually remembered their birthdays because I'm kind of like creepy like that about searching their birthdays online and stuff. So I found out their birthday, and the one mentor who took me under his wings, on his birthday, I sent him a pen as a gift, right? Like a $50, just a simple like fountain pen. So point is, those relationships take a while to build. It's a lot of giving for a long time, and then maybe you have an option to get. But if you do it enough times across 500 to 1,000 people, now you have those 10 people probably, which is 1% of that, who will be willing to, help you and go to bat for you.
Perfect. Thank you. If you hear my daughter in the background, it's her nap time. So
All good.
And then the last question is, for someone who doesn't have a finance background, would it be more beneficial to get an entry-level job in the industry, get your foot in the door, or would going to grad school, completing an MBA be better?
Yeah, it's a great question. My recommendation on that is, look, in a lot of these industries, entry-level jobs are hard, right? They're very structured recruiting processes for them, especially in the tier 1 roles, like front office, investment banking, consulting, accounting. And they're challenging jobs. You know, you'll be spending 20 hours plus at the office a lot of times, right? If I didn't do investment banking early on in my life, I would probably have a full head of hair. So having said that, I would recommend that if you are already a seasoned professional, especially given the fact that we're going through a recession and going through a pandemic and companies are laying off people, they're not hiring, I would definitely recommend you going to business school. Business school is one of the best places to go and take cover from a recession, take cover from a pandemic, and basically gives you time, gives you that extra runway to go learn, runway to network. It gives you access to a network, which is big. Everybody takes your email now because you're like, okay, good. You know, he's going to Chicago booth or he's going to Columbia University. I went to Columbia University. I'm happy to help him or help her, right? That mindset helps you, gives you that ticket to the ballpark. And remember, at the end of it, you'll meet a lot of people. And maybe, you know, within 6 months, you'll realize, I don't want to do investment banking. I don't want to do consulting. So I would highly recommend, if you are seasoned, meaning you've worked about 5 to 6 years at a minimum, it's better to just go to business school right now and then come in as a mid-level employee versus a junior, young, early stage employee. So it's better to come back as an associate or senior associate versus an analyst. And a lot of people came back when I was at Morgan Stanley as a VP. There's a lot of associates we hired who were a lot older than me, but they were like, you know, under me in my team. And they were like, you know, but it worked out for them, right? They were all coming from different industries, and their path into these elite industries was taking a slight detour. But again, having the mind on the mission, which is the long-term mission, long-term goal. Hopefully that helps.
No, it does. Hopefully that answers her question as well. Well, thank you so much, Sherjan, for having this session with us. Thank you for everyone who attended. Don't forget, you can click on the link up top to get access to the class. Definitely seems very informative. I know some of the things I've done in my career, so I was excited to see that I was on the right path. I did the right thing. So little confirmation there. And hopefully you guys find it just as helpful for you. Take care, guys.
Thanks so much, guys.